Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Great to see you all here. And welcome to the Wichita Sedgwick County Historical Museum. My name is Jack Kellogg, longtime volunteer here at the museum. Thank you for being here today. We are pleased to bring you this program. It is being recorded and will be made available online. This program is also made possible through a grant to the museum by the Charles and Joanne McIlwaine Foundation. The McIlwaines were longtime members and supporters of this museum. We also thank the City of Wichita and Sedgwick County Board of Commissioners for their operational support, and all of you who support the museum through annual memberships. Thank you. Now I would like to welcome our speaker, Mr. Dee Starkey, who serves the Wichita Jazz Festival in a number of ways, as development officer, historian, and artist relations. He was raised in one of Wichita's most musical families, who performed, organized events, and even operated their own music store for many years. I'm sure you'll all fondly remember that. Please join me in welcoming Dee Starkey.
Darn, I wanted to use, Jack and I are big W.C. Fields fans, and I was hoping everything would be full, and I'd say, it was so crowded, they couldn't clap this way, had to clap this way. But, thank you all for being here. This is a labor of love, and I'll hit and miss some things, so if you say, but he forgot to talk about that, there's Q&A time at the end, if I talk real fast. So, again, thanks to Eric and Jamie and Zach and everybody here at the museum for providing this opportunity to speak about two of my greatest passions, Wichita and jazz. Jazz for its unique place in our cultural history and Wichita's history, and because we're all here. Okay, so enough of that. We're almost to the first slide. I want to put historical context on where Wichita was, where Kansas was, and from a quick kind of review of things, post-Civil War times in Kansas, the Homestead Act, some people migrating to places like Nicodemus because it was safe there, and things that were going on here weren't as creepy as in other parts of the country, certainly during Reconstruction. Then we have the Jim Crow era. But how did people get their news? Trains went around, people of means went to places, people who didn't have enough means went to visit relatives somewhere, and they brought back stories of something going on somewhere else. And the other way we got information was newspapers. Remember those? And one of the interesting things is there's a building over at St. Francis and William on the southwest corner that's the, Railway Exchange, Newspaper Exchange Union. So 4 pages of a newspaper would be done, and then they'd be packaged in little packages to go out to all these small towns on the train so they could wrap it around their local paper and read the latest news, because that's how this is before radio. So, just newspaper migration and opportunities, urban versus rural, rich versus poor, black versus white, and all of these things come into play. So we get to our first slide, which really isn't Wichita, but it kind of is. Okay, this is the go forward. Okay, here's an ensemble from 1884, and pretty accomplished musicians. I'm not sure which one is Sam Jones. I bring this up because he was a trapeze artist for Ringling Brothers. He injured himself. He got involved in this musical group, the Pringle, Georgia Minstrels Group. But the Wichita connection is he eventually moved to Wichita. I think he's the bass player. He eventually moved to Wichita. He became Wichita's first African-American police officer, a constable with the police department. Oh, okay. It does. There you go. Throw this up, do a Roger Daltrey. Catch it. Got that. And this is a good time right now. If you don't have one of these, everyone should have this Arcadia book about African Americans of Wichita. There is so much information that we all need to know and share and be aware of what a unique story Wichita has in all of that. So pick one up. They're in the gift shop here. They're over at the African American Museum. And I see a whole bunch of all those Arcadia books at drugstores and stuff, at Walgreens and stuff. So that's the connection with Mr. Jones. And I thought a real good thing to reference this time period, those of you familiar with the Yale doctoral book Ragtime or the movie, there is a scene in the movie where the protagonist, Cole House Walker, is a prominent band leader, and there's a scene where you see this bass drum and it says Clef Club on it. So we get to this gentleman, a lot of banjos, Richard Krausen would like that. James Reese Europe, Clef Club, 1914. This is his organization. He was a musical promoter and musician, and when World War I broke out, he and his musician friends, part of the 369th Infantry Regiment, also known as the Harlem Hellfighters, went to France. They didn't want black people in combat. When they did go into combat, they proved to be better than the others, and they were the first group of people to win the Croix de Guerre in France. But they introduced jazz to France with different ensembles and stuff, and there's some movie scenes of here come the black musicians around the corner, and the French are just, oh my, we haven't heard stuff like this. So pretty important. This is going to tie into a very important Wichita story here in just a minute. So that's 1914. This group, one of his groups, Clef Club Orchestra, did play at Carnegie Hall in 1912. And here's James Reese Europe, very dapper, headed off to France to fight and do things, but also to bring jazz to France. And our next slide, this is his musicians on the boat returning afterwards. And I think we're familiar with the stories of veterans returning and how much the government took care of them, and certainly if you were a black musician, not too much. So life back to normal. James Reese Europe unfortunately had a tiff with a couple of his drummers and wanted to, just a few weeks after they got back at a gig in Boston, he reprimanded one of the drummers. The drummer pulled a knife on him. They thought he would live, but he passed away. His affairs when he was in Europe were managed by a gentleman, are we ready for this? Will Marion Cook. Will Marion Cook was a composer, arranger. He had studied with Anton Dvorak. He came from a free black family. So very accomplished musicians, and very early on he did one of the first presentations of a musical or a music review on Broadway, and this would have been in the 1890s. This is sheet music from Clorinda, or The Origins of the Cakewalk, and this would have been the sheet music from that. So he's very prominent. He's booking a whole bunch of bands all over the place and for all kinds of engagements. And he also had another show, Dahomey, and great pieces of notoriety with Will Marion Cook. So we've got to the sheet music. And then there's an event in Wichita in 1919. Okay, the war is over. The wheat show is a big deal. All the farmers are going to come here and see the new equipment, and we're going to celebrate that wheat is a big deal in Kansas, and it runs for a couple of weeks. And this is the great mystery is, who knew to book Will Marion Cook's American Syncopated Orchestra, singers of Southern and modern harmonies? This is Mr. Jazz himself. This is the positive hit of the whole show. This is a preview announcement that was in the Eagle about a month before the wheat show happened. So several slides relating to that. This is the newspaper coverage and the positive image that this portrays. The land of enchantment, Arcadia at the top of the new exposition building, which is part of the Forum, and Syncopated Orchestra, but I love the brought direct from Paris to Wichita. This is the original jazz band, made jazz famous in every corner of the globe. Every musician, skilled artist and entertainer of the highest, twice daily, 6 days, starting September. A big deal. So, and that's in the Eagle. That's still, it was at the end of September when it happened. So just the publicity on all of this. Here's a shot of the Forum. Those of you that were around for that, I get to use the pointer on this. Because, okay, there's the Forum part, and the Arcadia back here, the Arcadia Theater back here. And then there is a building right through here connecting those. This is the Arcadia Pavilion, and it also had a space in it called the Rose Room, but there was dancing on the roof. So it's this connecting part of our whole Civic Center complex at the time. So this happens at the same time that Woodrow Wilson is back from Versailles, and he's doing a promotional tour around the country to promote the League of Nations, and one of the final stops is Wichita. He's in very ill health. The train pulls in up at 10th, and Moseley and stops there. He doesn't get off the train. There's about 100,000 people in the streets waiting to hear the president, and about 15,000 people in the Forum and around the site to wait for the president, who didn't show up. The scheduled lunchtime entertainment for President Wilson would have been Will Marion Cook's Syncopators. And so it creates this awkward scene, as we're all familiar with Wilson's controversial stance on race and stuff, and Birth of a Nation and all of that. So you wonder, what would have that been like, Wilson's response to that? And again, who was responsible for bringing these musicians to Wichita? But a very interesting time that this happened, and it was a big deal. This is great. Mr. Jazz himself, the Syncopated Orchestra in Paris to Wichita, and a little teaser down here. If you get Max Sennett's Bathing Girls in person, it will give you the thrill of a lifetime, which, you know, everybody's always wanted, was the thrill of a lifetime. So pretty hot stuff. Then, this is interesting. The crowds are music mad. Wichita, seldom if ever heard any harmony. It's just blah, 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 and it's wonderful. Interpretation entirely KNEW and pleasing. Both of these shows could remain another week. So we think, wow, what a positive image. But of course we have images still like this of awkward caricatures, and so there was another ad for Will Marion Cook's American Syncopated Orchestra. So the stereo. This is at the same time we have race riots going on in Chicago, Red Summer, the Palmer raids, the Tulsa Race Massacre, and just all of these really bad things going on around the country. And yet we have a great jazz artist appearing in Wichita in 1919 with his ensemble, and not just for a one-nighter, for quite a while. So then we get to this building. We talked about other things going on, and of course the magic P word, prohibition. So how do we get around that? Well, let's build a nice new hotel over at Douglas and Waco, and that's the early version of it, because the AVI building is on there to the north. But in 1922, prohibition's going on, so what are we going to do? We'll put a speakeasy in the basement of the Broadview. It seats only 600 people, so it's kind of like the stories of the law enforcement would go across the river to Delano and you know, you take care of me, I'll take care of you, and we'll see you next time. So I'm sure that still went on. So of course, there's stories of Al Capone staying at the Broadview when it got too hot in Chicago, and legends if there must have been a tunnel under the river where he could hide the booze or something, and all sorts of things. But Wichita was roaring proportionally, just like other parts of the country in the 20s. The grain, railroads, oil, aircraft manufacturing, and the wonderful event of the semi-professional baseball team, the Monrovians, playing the Ku Klux Klan baseball team, and the Monrovians won, of course. And I thought, that's always occurred to me, if they don't have their pointed hats on, you're going to know who these guys are. But so a great event in 1924 in Wichita. But there's also, now we have radio. There's jazz on the radio. People are hearing great music from New York and Chicago. Jazz is the popular music of the day. And Wichita, I think by then, had become a big enough city that whatever went on in bigger cities, it happened here proportionally. Most of the cool things that were going on, and some of the bad things, were going on in Wichita. So I have a gap here in the slides. Stock market crash, the Depression, and then we have many touring bands are out. Maybe they're touring in just a beat-up thing. The best accommodations, of course, were traveling by train, especially if you were an African-American ensemble. It was safe on the train, and many times they would stop and send somebody out to get some sandwiches and get back on the bus or the train. This is a part in my research where I didn't spend the time that historians in here know about Dr. Tian and the Tian notes and all this research of reading every newspaper from 1870 to about 1970, and then getting all this information sorted out. And all of that stuff is online through special collections at WSU. But yeah, deep holes, rabbit holes to go into, and a lot of stuff to unpack on that. So we jumped from 1922 to 1939, and one of the most important people touring, and one of the most important people to music history, not only jazz history, but music history, is Duke Ellington is coming to Wichita in 1939, appearing at, with his famous 18 famous stars, and it's, this is at the Rose Room, the part of the Forum. So, and I have no idea, mail orders, they were brought by courtesy of the Green Tree Inn, so I would like to know more about that. And we see Dockham number 1, which was not the Dockham location of the sit-ins in the 50s, but we can see the prices and stuff, and a pretty big deal, the Duke Ellingtons. And when these artists came to town, they were here for several days. It wasn't just get in and get out. And a review, remember, music reviews in newspapers, very complimentary, talking about all these things, and they'll be at the Rose Room this Friday. You need to be there, and how it was set up for dancing and stuff. So again, I want to thank Mike Maxton is here, and he's great at finding, you'll ask him a question about something, he'll go, oh, here's the newspaper article, boom, he'll send it right to you. So I put this up because it's the Cab Calloway Orchestra, and I would love to know if they made it here to Wichita, but you see, these happy musicians are clowning around on the train, and it's safe. It's a safe environment. So Cab is down here in the lower corner, but and I also think this is like real musicians instead of the musicians on the train, and Some Like It Hot, but it's kind of the same thing. Better musicians up there. And now, this next picture is really a very important part of Wichita's jazz history. And you should all know about this, and we're trying to do work to document that this went on. This is December of 1940. Some WSU students helped facilitate this event. It's a recording session on the 5th floor of the KFBI, Kansas Farmers Bankers Insurance Building, still there at First and Market. And we see the young man, 18-year-old Charlie Parker, playing saxophone. Charlie Parker's first recording session. Charlie Parker is from Kansas City, Kansas. So the musicians in there are all important to jazz history. Orville Minor on trumpet, Bob Mabane on tenor, great Gus Johnson on drums, Bernard Anderson on trumpet, Charlie Parker, Gene Ramey on bass, and J. Hootie McShann on piano. So this went on there. I want to see a plaque on that building, and I've got some other people that are interested, and Orrin Friesen has reached out. He said, yeah, that's come up before, so if we can put together a coalition to get a plaque on there, it would be nice. I was in New York last fall and walked by a building, and I said, oh, there's a plaque. John Hammond, famous producer, and it was the building where Billie Holiday did her first recording in 1931. And I was sitting with some jazz fans in a club that night, and they had been teachers in New York City, and I told them about this building, and the guy goes, I've lived in New York City all my life, and some guy from Wichita has to tell me about this? And I said, we have a similar situation in Wichita. We need to get a plaque on that building. So future projects. But yeah, just a very important piece of jazz history. And I'm wondering if the fireplace and how much of that room is the same. Probably not. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, but one of the great vocalists after Billie Holiday in the 30s and very popular and many popular hits was Ella Fitzgerald, who was the featured vocalist with the Chick Webb Orchestra. When Chick Webb passed away, Ella became the leader of the orchestra, and they toured all over the place. And Ella Fitzgerald and her orchestra coming to the Orpheum in 1942, a 3-day stay, not a one-nighter. But it talks about all her pop tunes and stuff. And another article about that, Harlem's First Lady brings her show here, and just positive images and stuff of things going on at the Orpheum. Then Louis Armstrong comes to the Orpheum in, 1942, I think, 43, out of the Eagle. And I can't figure out what the picture is. I don't know if it's a motorcycle or a lawnmower or something, but it was a little fuzzy. Then in 1946, Ellington again comes to town, and he's playing at the Orpheum. Ellington was always fond of saying, I like the fact that I earn money off recordings and sheet music sales. It allows me to keep the band employed, so as soon as I finish a new composition, I can hear what it's going to be like. So, but this was also a time when we've got people realizing, wow, this is kind of an important part of our heritage, our cultural heritage, and it's uniquely an American art form. And so there's this idea of jazz education, of we need to share this knowledge with younger people. And this next picture, which was in African Americans in Wichita history, is a group called the Syncopators Orchestra, and this, I believe, is sometime in the 40s, maybe early 50s, but it's young African American musicians being put put together and better musicians teaching them about this art form. It's interesting that you could read some of the names. Perry Reed on drums, I remember. We see Reed's. Morgan is Walt Morgan, a great teacher and performer around here for years. And it's interesting, we have last names over here, but the three brass players are just Duke and Ray and Tom. So if anybody knows who those guys are, I'd like to know. So we also have this time, during the war, there was migration here, certainly from Oklahoma and Texas because of opportunities in the aircraft industry, and what's sometimes referred to as the southern diaspora of these people migrating here, and migration issues and other things, and certainly during the war, getting out of the South and getting to a better place where you can have a job in Chicago or Detroit or something. So the next one, wrong button, here we go. Yeah, this is a group of young people out on the town. You can see there's a little beverage there on the table. But I think this is in reference in the book about young aircraft workers, and they're out on a date. And the lady on the left seems to be enjoying herself. I'm not sure the other two ladies are, but the gentlemen all seem to be happy. Maybe they didn't share what beverages was on the table. So, but another, just being comfortable and being able to go out on the town and hear some music and stuff, and certainly a better atmosphere here in Wichita and more conciliatory than many other places. So this next picture, I dig into a few family things because it's kind of part of my DNA and stuff. So it's not like Dee showed up here to show a bunch of family pictures. But this is an interesting one. This is a group of GIs just back from Wichita, and probably some of them are going to school. And Dean Skaggs is the name of the drummer. The piano player is named Pete Chavez. And the trombonist is Bill Skillman. Two of his daughters are here today. And my father's playing bass on this. He was a trombonist. He told me early on, you don't need to know too much on the bass. Somebody will call you for something. So I took that to heart. Yeah, they were going to school, and post-war housing was Plainview and some of these other developments, real classy digs, I'll tell you. But the Starkeys lived in a complex, or in one of the buildings out in Plainview, as did the Skillmans. And besides playing jazz and stuff, and we're just back from the war, and we got married, and so no surprise, there were children. This is a picture of probably my oldest friend in the world, Sherry Skillman, who's right there, and her sister Stephanie is here. I'm on the left, and this was, get the children to sit at the piano. It'll be so cute. But I found it interesting that I'm pointing to D flat on the piano. We will bring this up. I don't know why my finger's on that key, but that comes into a later jazz story that we're going to get to about the key of D flat. So, and we certainly weren't playing out of the Bach book up there on the corner. It's another time where musicians are becoming celebrities, and there's liquor endorsements and cigarette endorsements and everything, and still kind of part of a pop culture. And I love this photo of Les Paul and Mary Ford at home with their entertainment complex and their Gibson guitars, and boy, you want to go out and have a scene like that too, I'm sure. This is a 1957 Gibson ad, but yeah, just... yeah, musicians are normal people. Don't you want to live like this, like these celebrity musicians? Oh yeah, we're still on this page. Okay. So we have, let's get to local thing. Here's a cover. Johnny Dotson's famous Blue Moon. This was a cover to go around photograph. You're out there on your date, and the photographer person comes through, and you take a picture, and you get it framed in a little thing like that. But so many clubs around then, the Blue Moon, the Playmore Club on South Broadway, the Mambo Club, and somebody earlier said, what was it before the Mambo Club when Gage Brewer was there? Shadowland, right. Then the Mambo Club, and I think people my age remember it as being the Early Bird Cafe. I remember as a kid driving down the hillside, or my folks were driving down the hillside, and we'd go past the Mambo Club and have these neon conga drums up there. And one would light up, and then the other would light up, and then they'd both light up. And it was like, wow, Las Vegas, this is pretty cool, pretty cool. There was also a great scene going on in the 9th and Cleveland area, clear over to 9th and Grove, in the African-American community. And this was certainly the story with the African American community. It was located originally just north of downtown, and it just kept getting shoved more and more to the northeast. And then the thing that happened here has happened all during the 50s and 60s was redlining, and let's shove an interstate highway right through a neighborhood. And that certainly happened here. Other clubs of the day, the Rock Castle Club, 37th and Broadway, which I think another name on it was the Hobbledehoy. And I think we all recognize that as the location of the Coyote Club. And there's great stories about that, about the sheriffs would call and say, hey, we're on the way out. Okay, put the slot machines in the basement. Sheriff would show up, the usual thing. Thanks, here's the payoff. And then, okay, he's gone. Back to normal. One of the great stories about the Coyote Club is people who played there just knew this is different than other places. Our friend Matt Wilson, who will be here at the Jazz Festival this year, said he runs into people who played with the great jazz drummer Art Blakey. And Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers played a gig, I believe, in the 80s at the Coyote Club. And Matt said, I run into these musicians who played with Art Blakey, and they said, the rest of his life he always talked about, we played this gig at this crazy place in Wichita called Coyote Club. That seemed to be a big deal to Art Blakey. So we have these clubs. Oh, we have another event happening in 1958. Louis Armstrong is coming again to Wichita. He's playing at our new field house on the campus, the WU field house, and it's also tied into a basketball game. I don't know what NIBL, something International Basketball League, I guess, and tickets at Hollabaw's. And this was in the Wichita Eagle magazine when newspapers had a magazine on Sunday too. So this is another family photo. This is my dad's dance band playing at the Trigg Ballroom in the 50s, I believe. And 11 pieces and a vocalist, Therese Schlotthauer. Her stage name was Terry Wayne. And these guys were all like uncles to me. Dad, being a trombonist, wanted to have a trombone feature, so he'd have two trumpet players come down and play valve trombone on those kind of featured things. He was the house band at the Trigg for a number of years, and these people would play other gigs. I found a calendar of Dad's gigs in this year, and in December he was working just about every night. And then I remembered, oh, that's the year I got a bicycle. So okay, we got the bike story in there. But jazz is filtering into other cultures and stuff, and Dad had a regular thing for years where the symphony's big fundraiser was the Viennese Ball. And this picture of my dad with Jim Robertson, who was symphony director for many, many years, and they were good friends, but the symphony would play Viennese waltzes and stuff, and then after the folks got a little bit lubricated, they would dance to Jim Starkey Orchestra. Dad also was involved where jazz is filtering into other things, and certainly on TV programs and pop stuff. And we had a local version here, a lunchtime program called the IGA Party Line at Channel 10. And Dad played a lot of those. He would run out to the station and play these at lunch. George Hunt on the piano. Doug Lyon is the vocalist, and a very important person to jazz in Wichita and its relationship to the guitar is Bob Cardinal on guitar. So, but this was a regular thing, and you can see kind of the set at Channel 10. It was a pretty cool deal. Then we had, during this time, one of the busiest groups in town was the Harold Carey Trio. They played at the Candle Club for many, many years. Harold played most everything in the key of D flat. It laid comfortably for him, I guess. Chuck Blackham was the drummer in that group, and the bass player was Gilmore Walters. Gilmore was brilliant, incredibly articulate, and he would write these long-winded letters to the editor in the paper, and it was just so brilliant. And I remember asking my folks, this Gilmore Walters, he's really smart. And I said, yeah, he's the bass player. He plays with Chuck and Harold at the Candle Club. Gilmore Walters, hopefully you know this, had a son. Ron Walters is on the left, who helped organize the 1958 Dockham sit-ins. Ron is here with Hervey Wright of the National NAACP office, and then Carol Parks, who was involved in the sit-in, and then their advisor, Rosie Hughes. But this really ties into this crossover of civil rights and cultural things going on, intermingled with what's going on in jazz. So again, we talked about jazz in the schools. It's getting more popular, it's getting accepted, and I think having a younger generation of educators. And we get to, well, let's go back here. Let's look at the civil rights thing again. So jazz in the schools becomes a big deal. Somebody recently told me that Thane Toll, who was the band director at Southeast, was the first one to say, we're going to have a jazz ensemble here in the school. So it started happening at other schools and certainly sneaking into university curriculums and stuff. So it became a big deal. One of the champions of jazz education was Stan Kenton, born in Wichita. And he organized jazz camps in the early 60s at Indiana University, and it was originally Kenton Jazz Camps, and then it became National Stage Band Camps. This is a picture of the faculty at National Stage Band Camp at Indiana in 1965, and a few important people on here. At the very top left on the end is Alan Dawson, great drummer from Boston. Next to Alan Dawson is my dad. We'll drop down a row, and the third person in there is the great bassist Ron Carter. Ron Carter had the clout. He was with Miles Davis for 7 years at this time, but he also had the clout with Miles, and Miles respected him so much that he could say, I'm going to go teach kids for a couple of weeks. Call somebody else to play those gigs. But Ron Carter is still performing. We were working on bringing him in here. He's 87, he plays brilliantly, and he's very sharp. He's very expensive. And maybe down the road we could try this next year, but just a very vital performer. Those of you who went through jazz education and did play-along records, the Jamie Aebersold play-along series, next to Ron Carter is a very young Jamie Aebersold, who looks like he's about 15 then. We dropped down a row and some other Berkeley School of Music people, but the classiest gentleman in the group is the gentleman in the suit. That's the great Oliver Nelson. And he's seated next to my mother. Mom got hired to teach theory to drummers. So women in jazz, who knew? So again, stuff in my DNA. So we get into the 60s and all kinds of stuff is happening. There's these 4 guys from England on Ed Sullivan, and everybody decides they can play in a band too. And this kind of morphs into, oh, we could add horns and we could have Motown influence and certainly the influence of James Brown. And then with the cultural scene happening in San Francisco and everywhere else in the mid-60s, oh, the hippie bands, oh, we can find some long-haired horn players and stuff too. And what I termed for this presentation, the blood, sweat, and tears effect. All of a sudden there's horn bands and everybody likes this, so it's a jazz fluence in to that time. The Wichita version of that, and okay, I don't have a prize for identifying who this is, but locals, who are these people? Serfs, yeah. I think it's in Oak Park, but this was on the back of their Capitol album. They were all in New York, and 3 of the musicians in this group. There's Mike Finnegan standing tall, as he always does, and Freddie Smith and Larry Fawcett were invited by Jimi Hendrix to play on Electric Ladyland. So, yeah, another Wichita tie-in to other things. And we talk about the importance of the guitar and all these people. Bob Cardinal and Dempsey Wright was another guitar teacher here, and their influence on guitar players, a mid-60s scene. And in San Francisco, there's this guy from Wichita, and you should all know who this is, great Jerry Hahn. And I think this was an album that he did. It was called Era Be In, like Era. It's a be-in, like a love-in. So, yeah, funny stuff. But very important part of the jazz history in Wichita. This gets to the point where it's into the late 60s. Some people in Wichita, very interested in jazz, go up to this jazz festival in Kansas City, and they hear Cannonball Adderley and Wes Montgomery and some other people, and they start thinking, well, that's cool. Why can't we do that in Wichita? So they started making connections and stuff. And Maxine Adams was kind of the key figure in that, my folks, a number of other people, and a person who's still living. One of the founders of the Wichita Jazz Festival is the writer Ted Blankenship. He still writes for Active Age and stuff, and we want to honor him this year and try and get some stories out of him and stuff about the early days of the Jazz Festival. The connections with Clark Terry were very important. Here's Clark playing early on in the Wichita Jazz Festival, but he came like the patron saint of this festival and then of many other festivals, modeling it on we'll have college groups perform, and then we'll do some clinics and stuff, and then we'll have a few big acts play on a final day. The first year of the festival in 1972 was 3 days at Century 2. Stuff in Mary Jane Teal, stuff in all around the building, high schools, colleges, and then some famous people in that first year. The first year of the festival, it was decided we need to have a Hall of Fame award to honor honor someone whose contribution to jazz and jazz education is so vital. And at the first Wichita Jazz Festival, the gentleman on the left is Homer Osborne, very important to Wichita's jazz history. A drummer, he was blind for many of his later years. He performed with Louis Armstrong and stretches back to even King Oliver. But he finally settled in Wichita and was very comfortable here. People knew about him, and he's so important to jazz. And this is, again, here's Jay McShann presenting the award to Homer Osborne. And the next year we decided we don't need to call it the Hall of Fame Award, let's call it the Homer Osborne Award, which it has been called ever since. When Homer found that out, he said, I don't want this award going to somebody just because they can blow snakes out of their horn. I want it to go to somebody who gives back to the children and carries on this legacy of this important American art form. So we continue to do that, and the number of people that have been honored, national and international education people, and we oftentimes find local people that we honor too for their contributions to jazz and jazz education. Okay, what's next? Stan Getz played here early on, and just a couple of pictures of early performances here. This guy, hopefully you all know who that is. And nice jacket, Dizzy, wow. And that was in 1975. So I could sit here for another 6 hours and show, here's somebody else here, and backstage stories, yeah, I got them. But some of that, a little much. This I wanted to put up. This is a local educator and composer, arranger, and great friend of Clark Terry's, Gary Fletcher. And they were both enamored of the recordings that Charlie Parker did in the mid-50s, Charlie Parker with strings. And Gary wanted to do a Clark Terry with strings, so he wrote all these arrangements, and it was a whole presentation one year when Clark was here. But the joy on Gary's face, and we know it's strings because we see these bows sticking up here, but a very important part of Wichita's jazz history. And then somebody local. Anybody know who this is? We had this great local scene going on in the 70s and 80s. Bill Reeves and Bill's Le Gourmet Restaurant. This is Art Hicks, local vocalist, but we featured him a few years on the festival. But so I wanted to throw in a few local things here. Okay, so the festival, we had some butts and seats, but we always did it the big day in Convention Hall, which has 5,000 seats, and we never filled it. But we had, it usually ended up kind of barely in the red, sometimes a little more in the red, and then we'd get together and bang our heads and do it again and try and do it better next week. In the 70s and 80s, so many people were here. There were pretty good crowds, and just some famous names that were here. And 3 stories that I remember that I can throw out is when Ray Charles was here. Yamaha was invited in, or Yamaha wanted to do the sound. They brought in all the state-of-the-art equipment. They had microphones all over the stage, and Ray Charles found out, and he said, get rid of all the microphones. We just need 2, one for me, one for the girls. Thank you. And so, yes, Mr. Charles. When Oscar Peterson was here, he brought his own Bosendorfer piano, which has extra keys in the bottom. Some of them didn't work, and he was just so nice. He goes, I'll just play around them. So when Chick Corea was here in the 80s, the bands, sometimes we go till 11 midnight or something. Chick went on about 11:30, and after about an hour he said, we're feeling inspired. I think we'll just continue playing, and we're all thinking the stagehand call is going to bankrupt us here. And I think he went on to 2 or 2:30. There was always a backstage routine with people working the festival of you can make a bet on when the last note would be played. It would cost $1 to get in there, and the person closest to when the last note was played got the pool. But again, we had this vibrant local scene. Some other people on the, in the 90s, B.B. King was here. Only B.B. King and Lucille showed up. The rest of the equipment was sent to Wichita Falls. So we had to use local resources that's the Pat Metheny thing. That's also Wichita Falls. So we scrounged and got stuff, and they were very complimentary about the Hammond organ and the Leslie. They said, we don't see stuff this good at other places. So again, it made us look good. And Dr. John was here, I think in '93, and with his whole entourage from New Orleans, and they brought in these big crates of stuff, and everybody, what's in all of those? And we figured it must have been snakes or something for a ceremony. We went to tell him it's time to go on in about 15 minutes, and the dressing room was dark, and there was incense going, and we figured they were having some kind of ceremony or something in there. But a wonderful performance. I remember asking him, there's a candle on the piano, what's the deal? And he goes, when the candle's out, show's over. So we've got Art Hicks there. Bringing in artists who would be an artist in residence and stay for a whole week and go out to schools and work with schools and then be a featured artist on the weekend. And one of the most important ones that we had in the early 90s, I think in 1990, was Branford Marsalis came in here for a week and spent time in Wichita. And here he is observing Andrew Bishop at WSU and Jazz Arts 1. And whatever was going on here, I think it rubbed off really well. Andrew Bishop is at the University of Michigan. He's the director of composition there, and he is, when he gets to New York, he does performing and hits a lot of things when academic duties don't call. Andrew is also the director of jazz programming at Interlochen Music Camp in the summer in Michigan. So Andrew's doing very well. Andrew told me a few years ago he didn't realize the work that his father was a Baptist minister in town, and he said, I didn't realize the work my father did in the civil rights movement, that he worked with Dr. King on a lot of civil rights activities. So it's just finding out, wow, I didn't know my parents did that. Pretty cool. What have we got next? This I wanted to put up. Great guitarist Russell Malone was here in 1994, and he was all ready to play all the time. So when the festival, my set's over and the festival's over, is there an after-hours place? And there was. It was a club at Central and Waco called Lettuce. It's Russell Malone and Hugh Fraser, a pianist from Canada who was here. Some local musicians played on this. I've got several pictures of this. I bring this up because Russell Malone was such a vital and important guitar player, and he passed away last August of a heart attack when he was touring with Ron Carter in Tokyo. So it was a trio thing, and Ron Carter put up pictures. We will have an empty chair here, and the rest of the gig will be piano and bass. But for him an artist of that stature to die so early, it was very tragic. It would have been nice to have had him back here again. The festival, we lost some big money in '94, and out of the blue, the business manager for Music Theater of Wichita came and said, well, what if we brought in Manhattan Transfer and we'll put the Jazz Festival name on it and the Music Theater on it, and then when all the dust settles, we'll split what's left. Sounds good to me. And we tied it into the Chamber of Commerce annual dinner, which I thought was cooler than having some politician come in and yak to the chamber. So we put about 5,000 people in Convention Hall. It was a very memorable event. We used the Wichita Jazz Orchestra, all professionals played on that, and there's one of them back there. And also a string section of people from the symphony, but a very memorable thing. It was a financial success. It bailed the Wichita Jazz Festival out the next year. We brought in, Wynton Marsalis was here the next year, and his management had called like a year earlier. He'd like to play your festival, and I said, we've got everybody, but no, he wants to play it next year. That we had that much of a reputation out there that, yeah, you should play the Wichita Jazz Festival. And I want to back this up a second because this is another cool tie-in, is some of you around here in the 80s into the 90s, we had a nice African-American bookstore on 13th Street, Ikra Books. The owner there, Jihad Muqtasid, a very big jazz fan. I remember going in and talking to him one day, and he said, you know, the Jazz Festival has some great people here. You know who you ought to get? I said, tell me. He said, you ought to get Gary Bartz, who had a long run with Miles Davis. And I said, yeah, that would be cool. It would be great to have him here. And lo and behold, the clouds parted or something, and I said, well, who's in this group that's coming? Oh, and Gary Bartz is the saxophonist. This is Gary Bartz on alto, John Hicks on piano, Ray Drummond on bass, Peter Leach on guitar, and Marvin Spitty Smith on drums. This is Scottish Rite Temple. Gary Bartz had a good story. He said, when I first went with Miles Davis, I didn't have a very good horn, and so Miles, he picks up the telephone and calls the Selmer factory in Paris and goes, this is Miles, send Bartz a new horn. And he said, oh, I had a new horn. So, yeah, Miles had clout. One of the great surprises in concerts that we were able to do early on in, when he was touring, this is 95, this is Joshua Redman, Peter Martin on piano, Chris Thomas on bass, And the great Brian Blade is the drummer. It was about 25 years ago where the singer Joni Mitchell said, I think Brian Blade's the only drummer I want to work with the rest of my life. So, when she'd do things with the drummer. But really 4 prominent players who are all still active today. But this just captures the scene of what the Jazz Festival was in the mid-90s, and it's in front of the curtain in Century 2. And it's nice picture. This is a year later at Scottish Rite Temple, same banner. Kristen McBride on bass, Tim Moorfield on tenor, piano player will come to me in a second, Joey Calderazzo, and the drummer, who I just saw yesterday over at Butler County, Carl Allen, yes, thank you, thanks, Gray, was in the group, but it was a very memorable performance, and the place was packed, and it was such an enthusiastic audience. And at some point early on, Kristen McBride said, I didn't know much about Wichita, but I thought it was, it's kind of laid back and everything, but man, I feel like we're playing the Apollo. The audience was that enthusiastic. Kristen, we always were interested in the artist's writers of what do they want in the dressing room or something. Kristen's was very simple. Can you supply some decent barbecue before we go on? And those of you who've been around remember Willie White at Pitt's Barbecue, and his daughter was running the barbecue place then at First in Washington, and I told Mary, can you bring barbecue over to Scottish Rite Temple? And she said, oh yeah, it's just down the road. Sure, that'll be easy. But the band loved the food. Kristen is embracing Mary and just saying, girl, this is so good, I think we need to take you on the road with us. And I think she had that picture on the wall at the barbecue place for several years afterwards. The other little backstage scenes that went on, these are kind of fun. Bass conference here is Glenn Holmes, who played here for many years, still very active and based in Cleveland. The younger-looking guy with the hair is the principal bass player in Wichita Symphony, Mark Foley, Dr. Mark Foley. And he's seen that picture. He said, wow, I had hair back then. And then, of course, on the right is the legendary Charlie Hayden. So a great conference there. I have no idea what they were talking about. Charlie Hayden had a very wry sense of humor. He would tell a joke, and it'd take a while for you to start laughing. And this was another great, about that same time, is Charlie Hayden's told one of his crazy jokes, and Jerry Hahn is back there, I'm laughing at your joke, okay, man? But, yeah, just a great time then. The Jazz Festival got a little bit smaller, and we would still do events every year, and this is where I kind of backed off for several years and wasn't involved as I am now, but I would pay attention. Man, they're still bringing in big people. Bill Frisell, Joe Lovano, Esperanza Spalding, Pat Metheny at the Orpheum, and just a number of, so there were always things going on, a lot of concerts at the Crown Uptown. Everybody keep an eye on that. Let's save that place. Crazy stuff. Yeah, bringing in, the Count Basie hand about 3 years ago was here, and that just hit me, oh my gosh, this is in my DNA. I want to get more back in and involved more with the Jazz Festival. And yeah, I'm kind of the Don Quixote of things, leading the charge on, we could be bigger, we could do bigger stuff, we can do more outreach and collaborations with things. So this last picture of artists is, again, at Scottish Rite Temple. This is the Vanguard Band, plays every Monday night since the early 60s at the Village Vanguard in New York City. Originally called the Thad Jones Mel Lewis Orchestra, but just the best players in New York getting an opportunity to play really interesting and difficult music, and the band is always so good. I heard the band last spring and visited with the drummer, John Riley, who is still the drummer in the band. When he was here and we were going into Scottish Rite Temple, I was beside him and I pulled the door open, and we were so busy yakking that John Riley walked through the plate glass window and severed his wrist. And he said, I think it'll be okay. Let me go in the restroom and I'll clean it up. And the bleeding was so bad, there was a gentleman next to him and said, that's pretty bad. I'm a doctor. Come with me. And they rushed him right over to St. Francis and sewed it up, and he came back and played the gig. But when I saw him in New York, he recalled that and remembered it and told me the story about the doctor taking him over to St. Francis. So everybody says, so what's going on with the festival? And again, there's so many great things going on right now, that wonderful young musicians coming out with the knowledge of jazz and doing innovative things in many different contexts, same way at Friends, and that we have an outlet now with Walker's Jazz Lounge, which is as classy a club as any place in the country. And it's so pleasing to go there and see young professional people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s who know this is a different scene than the other places in Old Town. This is where you come and sit down and listen to music. So most of the time, the audience is very attentive. There's been a few we've had to shush there. And it's fun to see young people come into the club at Walker's and go, oh, this is different. This is not my scene. And they'll leave. So, yeah, it's not your scene. So, again, plugging the Jazz Festival, and that it's an important part of our cultural heritage, that we have a city that has a wonderful symphony, a music theater, ballet, opera company, and the third oldest jazz festival in the country. Ours happens in the spring. Those others, Monterey and Newport, are kind of summer and fall events outdoors. So we do it the same way we've done it, try and tweak it and keep it going. So people have asked, so who's coming this year? And we will have all this stuff up on the new website just in the next couple of days. This is mostly the lineup of the concerts. Jazz in the Round at Northwest High, the Delano Jazz Orchestra with Donna Tucker at the Art Museum on Wednesday. Thursday, great drummer Peter Erskine is coming here with his trio, and this is just the highest quality of jazz that you can find. We're going to do that at the Art Museum because it's a classier setting. And we were kind of worried about, boy, the Orpheum is really big. And the Orpheum was so gracious and said, oh, that happens all the time. People think they can play here for 3 days, and then they see how big it is and go, well, maybe one. So that's going to work out great. We will also be screening some photographs that Peter took during his weather report touring days. So there's some really interesting pictures of Jaco Pastorius, Wayne Shorter, Joni Mitchell, Herbie Hancock, and other people that jazz people will go, wow, those are good pictures. All day on Friday, as we always do, is college and high school groups coming into WSU all day. They're bringing in two wonderful clinicians this year, Pat Bianchi, who is the hot person, organist out of New York, and Dan Wilson, wonderful guitarist out of New York. And they will be here all day, and then they will perform on a concert that night with Mid-Kansas Jazz Ensemble and Jazz Arts One. Saturday, Matt Wilson, we always love to have him here, and early on we said, yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that at the Orpheum, and he's got a wonderful group. Anisha Rush from Chicago on saxophone, Jeff Lederher has been with him a long time, Don Clement on piano and vocals, and Ben Allison on bass. So just a wonderful concert in and of itself. And then this happened, that a young lady from Newton, Kansas, won the Sarah Vaughan International Vocal Competition, which is a stepping stone to stardom. I put it in these terms. We couldn't afford her next year. I called her brother Nathan and said, tell your sister to call. She called and said, you're going to be at the Jazz Festival. Well, we are? Okay, yeah. So it's working out great. Her band is wonderful. They played weekend before last at Jazz at Lincoln Center at Dizzy's Club. And this week she's doing some work with the drummer Terry Lynn Carrington, whose first professional gig was the Wichita Jazz Festival. And they're doing a tribute to Max Roach and Abby Lincoln's Freedom Now suite, which was a very important work at the time. So, yeah, they are big time. Her husband Randall is a trumpet player, wonderful pianist, Yoyoi Ikawa. And then her two brothers, Jacob on bass and Nathan Webb on drums. This will be at the Orpheum, and we kind of said, you guys figure who wants to go on first. They'll work it out and do a coin flip or something. But this is also, I want to point out, this is the last chance to hear world-class jazz at the Orpheum, because they'll be closing in June to finish restoration and put in really nice seats and get all the tech stuff up to par. Hopefully it'll be a little less than the year, but finish restoration. But they are talking about some big jazz events, so we're brainstorming when the Orpheum reopens. Let's a lot of talk going on there, so it's exciting to think what can happen. Also during the festival, we're doing some jazz films at the Tallgrass Film Center. There's some history talks around town. I hope to do a reprise of this thing at the African American Museum, and some book events, a writers panel hopefully, and some things that are still working out details. But and let's close this part with always enjoy the top quality live jazz that we have at Walker's Jazz Lounge. And what's next? Let's end on that. I think you can't beat Quincy Jones for telling us how it is. And I think that's it. Q&A time. And no questions about, hey, my uncle used to play with so-and-so. But especially if you've got information about filling in some of these details, because that's what I want to know. I went with Benita Gooch with Community Voice the other day, and I said, people need to be taught to talk to your elders, talk to older people, and get stories, get oral history. Hold your phone up and let them talk and tell you about things, especially if things are still working upstairs. And Benita said, you know what? We are those old people. So, teaching young kids to pay attention. It's great to see some young people here, and especially Henry Miller back here, who's all over town doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And he's at Northwest High. So, cuestiones, por favor. Come on.
What can people do to help support the Jazz Festival?
Give us a bunch of money. It's the same thing, anything in the arts. And they say, what's the Metropolitan Opera is the most well-endowed arts organization in the country, and they're pleading for money all the time. And and that's where our board is small. We have a lot of retired teachers who it's in their heart to keep this going, and we are looking for new board members who are connected into the community and know people and get it that, wow, this is really cool that we have a jazz festival that's long-standing and has this reputation. Years ago, artists would come in here and there'd be things like, hey, last time I saw you, man, was in Berlin? No, well, that was Tokyo. And we thought, gosh, when they're there, they probably go, hey, last time I saw you was in Wichita. So, we've got that reputation. When I was in New York last fall, I went to several different clubs, and if I had occasion, I'd say I'm with the Wichita Jazz Festival, and there was a response like, oh, I played there when I was in college. Oh, I remember going there and seeing so-and-so. So we've got cred in New York. We just need to build it up a little more among the locals, and because they'll say, well, why don't you bring it? Well, because they're really expensive. So what we had years ago, and we don't have now, are money from Boeing, money from Coleman, Greyhound charities, and all these things where, wow, we've got a nice cushion. We can do nice things and not lose too much money. So we have to be very careful with our programming and stuff. But we still, as they say in showbiz, we need butts in seats. And we need connections with people who get it and will support it. So end of commercial appeal there on that. Other questions? WichitaJazzFestival.com. We're using Colby Marketing. They're wonderful people, just very high quality work. But we've been tweaking a lot of information just to have it accurate and work smoothly. So when somebody holds their phone up and says, boom, it works. Oh, good, I got my QR code for that concert done. That there aren't glitches in it. So they're working out a few bugs, and it should be up, I think, Monday or Tuesday. But again, even with any of this stuff, people just, you can hold up your phone and take that, and then you can go manipulate it however you want and share it. The use of phones for any of this gathering of information. So I put together a whole bunch of history pictures and Jazz at the Orpheum things that we did for Kansas music educators last week. And what I found there is the teachers and the kids would all go by and just pull out their phones and go, oh, there's the stuff on Matt Wilson. Well, let me get a picture of each one. And then they can go home and they know about it, and hopefully they'll be there for the events. Yes?
Did the beer-sponsored tours, like the Coors put on, did they ever tie
We never tied any of those big things. There was another, I think, what was the cigarette company? Philip Morris, I think. Yeah, underwrote some things. And that never happened here. We did have good support for a number of years from House of Schwann, the big Budweiser distributor, but it was things at the local level rather than a national company. Also, we had people come in, and some of that would be picked up if they had an endorsement from a manufacturer or something, or a publisher. Some of that might have been picked up. That whole industry has changed now, where I talked to artists today, and they said they don't know anybody at the Zildjian company or the Selmer company anymore. The whole culture has changed as to how we get information. So again, it's just paying attention and being able to manipulate your social media to your satisfaction and not waste time on it. Carl Allen came to a drum event over at Butler County College yesterday, and I went over to visit with him, and one of the first things he said to the kids is practicing is important, and when you practice, you take this thing that you're playing with all the time, put it in another room and forget about it, okay? Not, I got to get that email, just teaching that, you need to spend quality time doing this. He also asked the kids, who has the most responsibility in the band for keeping the time solid? And the kids would say, oh, it must be the bass player, it must be. And finally one of the kids goes, everybody? Yeah, correct. So a great teacher, and it was great to see him work with kids yesterday. And he did bring up the fact of, seems like Matt Wilson comes to Wichita a lot. You need to have me come back. And I said, well, we'll work on it. Carl Allen is the new director of jazz studies at UMKC, so he's a lot closer than being in New York City. And I said, if you want to come down for festival stuff, give me a holler. We'll be glad to have you, because we need more drummers. Yeah, as you can see, I can babble and go off on tangents and all of this stuff till whatever cliche is out there. Question, yes? Not really, and this is another thing, is just kind of building these area things so people would make the effort. The real serious fan would say, this is quality stuff in Wichita, and they would come down here. Jed Bodwin at KMUW called me and said the people at the Stiefel Theater in Salina, on that Friday night where we have the stuff at WSU, Esperanza Spalding is playing up there. And they said they're interested in collaborations, and I thought, they do a wonderful job with their programming. I thought the only thing to do would be to say, how many people from Wichita came up here tonight? And if it's like 50 people, then they'd say, okay, we've got a relation. If it's 2 people, then, but if it was 50 people, then say, well, then go down to Wichita tomorrow night and hear Matt Wilson's group and April Webb's group. But yeah, there are other organizations, and that's where just I'll lay awake and think, oh, that would be a good thing. Let me see if I can find, I'll just Google it. Oh, there's all the information. I'll put a feeler out there, and people have gotten back and said, yeah, that sounds good. We had hoped to have the great jazz writer Michelle Mercer, who lives in Colorado, come in. She's done a definitive biography on Joni Mitchell and also on Wayne Shorter, and that Peter Erskine is going to be part of this book event. I just thought, how great to have people who know Joni Mitchell and Wayne Shorter. I just want to hear them talk and tell stories back and forth. So opportunities like that, and she said she would be unable to make it. We have some other people in the wings that I think we can pull this event off. And I think we're going to do this on the Friday afternoon while stuff is going on at school, and hopefully do that over at the Lux Ballroom is what we're working on. And if some of these things don't happen, then I'm lying. But fingers crossed that these other things will happen. But the main things of these concert events I think is very high quality and worth everyone in Wichita knowing about and supporting. I would love to see the festival grow back to where this would be the big springtime event, and originally there weren't too many things going on, and now every night there's 20 things going on. We're a big city. But to have the kind of notoriety in the spring that our Tallgrass Film Festival enjoys in fall. People don't go to that because they know about the director, the actor, and the backstory. They go because it's the place to be. Just like we go to symphony, not because I know that famous dead white European composer or somebody a little more current, or the story of the piece or something, or the performer. They go because it's the place to be. And we think the Jazz Festival is the place to be in late April. Oh, come on. Okay. Early on, because we knew people up there, and and there are connections there, and a number of people there have played here. The great bass player Bob Bowman's been here a number of times, and Todd Strait, and the people in that community, and also connecting with the KU, K-State, and Topeka area and stuff. So there've been back and forth things going on for years, but now it's kind of, oh my gosh, what do we do next year, and just how can we pull something off? And so far, we're keeping it going. We've only made it to 53 years. So I'd like to, when I'm gone, hopefully it's still going on and somebody else will, and who knows. We are paying attention to younger artists and stuff, and that's where I think this thing with April Webb is just a blessing for the festival that she's going to be here. And her folks still live in Newton and are just wonderful people. And But she and her brothers and everybody in the group are just so nice. And it's really exciting that they're going to be here. And everybody else. And you be there too. Okay. Thanks, everybody.